So this is DRE, also known as Digital Race Engineer, and I found this to be a great spotter. There's nothing wrong with the default that comes with iRacing, but this gives a bit of extra information, and it's more real time. Ignore my last race P17 that I got I got my front wing knocked off on the first lap, and so that's, well, it's not necessarily a typical result. So if we look through this, I think what's interesting is just to go straight to some of the settings. So in DRE, you can go through, and there are different subscription levels, so that will give you access to the different features. That's what it means by, you can see here it says performance or essentials, and so you pay per month, as everything is, what you need and what you justify and what you can budget for. So you can see, and this is just a quick overview, I'm certainly not going to walk through all these settings, but it just gives you an indication of some of the verbal instructions you can hear through your headset, which again for VR racing is essential. Anything I can put through my headphones, because I can't look at screens, I can't look at a second screen, I don't look at my wheel LEDs. I've got a Stream Deck, but I don't look at that. I can press the buttons because I know where they are. So anything that comes through my headphones is essential. And for me, racing in VR, this works really well. I enabled weather, but I'm not using that yet. There's auto replay, that's quite useful. DRE, if you parked up in a pit stop, it'll automatically shoot to what it determines as interesting footage on the track. That can be good. If we look through car, there's lots of settings just to give you warnings about the car. There's some sort of calibration advice if you haven't configured your pedals properly. Gear shift, I don't need that. This is superb. Overtaking, what happens is, if I'm close or side by side with another car, I'll actually get an audio sound. And you have to watch one of my videos to hear it, and it'll be spatial. So if the car is overtaking me on one side, I'll hear that approaching, and it increases in intensity, and it just gives me that, as well as the spotter in DRE telling me where the driver is. I have this audio. It's just fantastic. For me, it makes a big difference. I know on RaceLabs you can use, and certainly in triple screen setups, you can use, there's a visual display where you can have, it's like a radar or a heat map, and you can sort of see. I don't use that because it's a bit tricky to get RaceLabs or equivalent working within VR. You can do it, but I actually use RaceLabs to record into OBS, and that's what you see on my videos. But in DRE, audio is everything. And proximity, all of this is really good. I still race fixed setup, so fuel doesn't really apply to me, and I'm not doing anything more than 20-minute races at the moment. Pit can be quite useful to tell you when your opponent's pit. I don't use that. Pit speed approacher I do use. It actually says disabled here, and I think that's just because my account has become de-authenticated from the app, which happens once a month or so, and you just have to log back in again. But I do have that enabled, so as you're coming into the pits, you get an audio sound which decreases in pitch as you reach the appropriate speed, and that's tremendously helpful. It helps you then learn it for the particular track, so you don't need it, but I still keep it on. You can have various information read out to you from DRE sporadically each time you pass the finish line, and it'll tell you what your sector performance is, drop off. Sometimes when you hear purple sector, that's just amazing. That means you're the fastest sector of the race of all cars. It's really motivating to hear some of this. And again, it's balance, it's personal preference on whether you want to be quiet so you can focus, or whether you want a bit of chat and a bit of feedback. Incidents, I definitely have off. I don't need to hear if I've gone off track. I know if I've gone off track. I don't need to hear it. Delta wave is quite interesting, but as it says here, it gives you a flutter and tremolo effect. I just found it overwhelming for me. I might go back and try it later, but it just seemed to be a constant sound based on your track-to-track performance. If you're running a long race, like a 12-hour, maybe that's useful. It wasn't for me. There's some obvious settings here for input. I use push-to-talk, so when I want to talk to Dre and ask a question, I have a button mapped. That's personal preference. If my environment was quiet, I was in a room alone, I didn't have friends or family that occasionally may walk in, then I may not use push-to-talk, but for me in my environment, it's essential. Output goes through my headphones. I have increased the volume to 150% just to get the balance right. I need to hear, in iRacing, I need to hear the sounds of the vehicle and the track and the tyres, but I need DRE to sort of pop in when he or she speaks, so I can really hear. And that's just the balance that I've got based on the levels that I've set. And that's the only mapping I have, push to talk. I'm quite fond of Dre. For me, it's essential. I can race without it, and I do so occasionally, but it is useful and it's helpful, and it adds to the realism.